I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm gonna come in a different way. Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I can hear you loud and clear.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to CollaborativeU TV, where we inspire, empower, and educate. Today's show is going to be amazing. The first half of the show, I have brought on my partner extraordinaire, Michelle R. Harden. The second half of the show will be with HR consultant, author, and business coach extraordinaire, Arquella Hargrove. She is coming, guys. She is coming. So, you know, Michelle, I did not catch everything last night, but I know that last night was the kickoff for the upcoming write your what is it? I got a story to tell challenge. I know that you are kicking that off, and that is leading to the Real Film Festival. So I want to keep that in everybody's mind, because I just believe that everybody has a story to tell. And I just wanted to bring you on quick, so that you can kind of give us an update and tell us what the audience needs to know to get connected.
Awesome. Thank you again for having me again. I'm getting used to it now, I think. But we started the challenge last night. This is a 7-day free challenge. So last night was the first night that we're going through 45 things to do in writing a book in 45 days. It is possible. You have that amount of time to complete a book and have that book in your hand by the end of December, before you go into 2021. And so we're encouraging people, whether it's a story or whether it's a book, to take that opportunity and begin to chronicleize their life, an event, anything that they desire. Is not just limited to their story. But I even remember, my father talking about my grandmother, and I immediately reflected, I wish she would have left those recipes to all those great desserts that she used to make. So it's those type of things that we could just take this moment to just to put those things together. So that's what we're doing. Tonight is day 2. So we're going through Module 2, which is the next series on how to write that book in 45 days.
Wow. And I love that. I love what you said, because it's not just about writing a memoir. It's not just about writing that kind of book. Like, it could be a cookbook. Like, it could be your time and your season to drop that cookbook. And I mean, there are a lot of us who have had family members to leave here without giving that information. I know I had an uncle who was an amazing barbecue man. And I found my mother's scratch sheet of his barbecue sauce recipe, because he had the best barbecue sauce I had ever had. And she didn't tell me how to do it. She didn't tell me how much it was. She just gave all of the ingredients. And so sometimes, those kind of things, when they go, I mean, that's where generational wealth is created, right? It's created through products, services, and ideas. So that's important. I know last night you gave some tips, right? Yeah, can you go through them? I mean, is it top secret just for your group, or can we hear it?
You know what? It's simple things that most writers can consider before even writing a book. Understand why you're writing, because you're going to need that motivation to keep you pushing. 45 days is not a long time. It's a very, very short window. But in that window of time, you do get writer's block. You get to a place where, you don't know how to push past something you've already said, or you don't really fully understand what you need to do to really cross over to that next chapter. So it's right having that why, having that why. Why are you writing this book? To motivate you and to keep it in front of you. Another thing we talked about is to brag about yourself. This is even before you get into writing chapter 1. It's a part of the exercise that on the back of the book is about you. Who are you? Only you can tell who you are. And I have my book here too, and I had an opportunity not just to say basically who I was, but basically why I was the expert in this subject matter. So about you is the part that actually go on the back of the book. And then we begin to talk about dedication page and acknowledgement page. These are the areas where you're thanking the people who have helped you, who have really motivated you to write the book, or it may be somebody who really inspired you. And we also talked about not just the acknowledgement, but the dedication. And I always advise writers to think about past, present, and paying it forward. So in those
Right.
two areas, the past, who whether they're no longer here on earth, but they were a part of your learning um, um, motivation in helping you to write that book. And so it could be Maya Angelou. It could be your grandmother. It could be a number of people who was the one who actually helped you. And then the present, thinking about those people who really inspired you. I think about, even right now, people who are, just as I see them doing different things and really living their dreams, it's those people that you want to give acknowledgments to. Most time is your spouse. You'll see somebody
Yeah.
say, I want to dedicate this to my husband, my children, my mama, my
Right. My children. Yes. Yes.
and
Teachers.
so,
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and so it's that's the beginning part of state. Even before you begin to write, considering one other thing, and I talked about this last night, is about the person that do your forward. Most times we want to pick a
Oh.
celebrity, we want to pick somebody that's notable. Why? Because we think that that's going to attract more book sales. But the reality of it is the forward needs to be written by somebody who knows you best, who really can elevate what you talk about in your book. You're going to send them the first 3 chapters of your book so that they can read and they can, really share. And so my giveaway last night was for those that registered for the free challenge, that they got a copy of my forward. I mean, really today, 8 years later, I still,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to jump into that writer's challenge because
yeah,
I absolutely, yes, I absolutely know that I need to do it. But one of the things that in talking to other business professionals, business coaches, people who are notably recognized as experts in their field, that is one thing that all of them have in common. They're authors. Like
yeah.
they have something written that then gives them a bit of what can I call it? Not just relevance, but what were you about to say?
Credibility.
Credibility. That
Yeah,
is it.
yeah,
The when you're a published author, that brings up your credibility. I mean, even when you look at scientists and people like that, like they want to be published in journals. That is what gives them that stamp of approval, that expert status. And so for those of you, I sound like I'm your commercial. Those of you who are interested, and I absolutely am.
yeah.
Those of you who are interested in doing that, in bringing your credibility up in whatever area that you are an expert in, writing a book is the way. Am I right, Michelle?
I believe so. It was that's where I got my inspiration in writing the book. I was sitting in a women's professional networking meeting, and the
Mhm.
lady bluntly said, she said, if you are an expert in anything, business cards is not going to get it. Passing business cards out to let people know who you are, that's not going to get it anymore. You got to have a book. You got to show evidence that you are the expert in that area. And so that was in May that I was inspired, or I got the download that I needed to write a book, but I procrastinated. I just felt like that I didn't have what it took to write a book. I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know where to start other than write on some sheets of paper, and so I procrastinated. In November of that year, 8 years ago, 2012 or 2011,
That's huge.
I started to write. And December 31st, 11:30 p.m., I had my manuscript in my hand. That's 45 days later.
Wow.
Biggest
But
thing
that's
is,
key though. Wait, before we skip over that, because procrastination is the enemy to a lot of people when they know that they have something to do. Let's talk through that, because we blame it on procrastination, but procrastination is really the term that describes it. But
Mhm.
what's really going on in the background is what I'd like to get into, because sometimes we just say, "Oh, I'm procrastinating," but procrastination is not the root cause. Procrastination is a symptom of a bigger problem. Would you
Sure.
say? Yeah.
Sure, I think fear has a lot to do with it. Fear,
Mm,
and seeing so many other people being successful at doing it. Some are wondering, how can I? It's already been done. So how can I compete? And really, it's no competition, because your story is very unique. Your
yep.
expertise is unique. You're offering something that nobody else can, even though it may be similar, in relation to others. But really, the reality of it is there's no other you. There's nobody else like you. So your contribution and who you are, even if it's just for your family, for them to understand. Like my dad, he sits and he writes at least 12 to 16 hours a day. He doesn't write, he types on the computer. He's constantly typing. But what he's doing is leaving, information. He's leaving research. He's leaving family history, so that, when we come years and our children's children come years later, they'll know exactly where they came from. So, yeah, fear has a lot to do with it, not thinking you have the resources, finances, to get it done. Because, you hear these horror stories. It cost me $20,000, $15,000
Yeah.
for a book, and in most cases, that's not the case. But it does take focus, and it takes dedication. And sometimes you can't do that by yourself. But when you know you got somebody that, where's chapter one?
Right.
Where's chapter two?
Accountability is important. But I like that, because and because fear comes in different, it's not always the same fear too,
Sure.
some people, like you said, they fear, is it going to be as good as the next person's? So that's comparing, comparison too is an enemy, it's a thief.
Yes.
But then also fear of success, because sometimes you don't know what's going to come with it, and so you're afraid, if you become successful, will you be able to stay at that level? So there are so many things that cause people to, to fear and to be uncertain. Definitely that comparison
Yeah.
is totally like the thing. And the crazy part about it is as I've been, for the last few years, Michelle, I've really been looking at other people's story.
Mhm.
They may look like they're overnight successes.
No. Years of toil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that's encouraging, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. You look at Warren Buffett, you look at a lot of these success, and most of them didn't get it until their 50s. They didn't, they tried so many things, and then when they hit that one thing, even though they was in the same field, they hit that one thing, and then it spring forth their success. And so you would think that they had, just had success all of their lives. But, and that's just one example of many examples. I look at like Elisa Nichols and listen at her story often, and how, she went through a toll, went through people, not accepting her. She tried out for this movie and Charlie's Angels, and felt that she was the one, but because of some other obstacle, she didn't get it. And it was
Yeah.
a big setback. So many different things that caused her to, not feel successful. I mean, it was a lot of times based upon her story that she could have given up, but she
Absolutely.
really, really, and then now, just recently I saw she's
I
engaged.
know. Shout out. Congratulations, Lisa
And
Nichols.
that is evidence of
Yeah.
people staying in the game and accepting. You got to embrace, those moments where it don't work. Some people say
Yeah.
you disregard them. No, you really got to accept them. That didn't quite work. What do I need to do differently? How do I need to make that shift? What people do I need to put around me? How do I need to navigate, and don't make that mistake again,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up Lisa Nichols, because I've followed her for a long time,
Yes.
and her transformation, just it took years, but she stayed at it. And I mean, even in her, she's had so many challenges along the way,
Sure.
from poverty first to then the weight issue,
Yeah.
and then wanting a partner. And she talks about it, she talked about it in her little when she was talking about her new fiance,
Yeah.
how he's been in her life for over 10 years, and he's been the friend that she shared everything with. She shared all of the bad relationships, all of the stuff that's happened, and they formed a friendship, and now look at what it is. So I mean, you can't even discount friends anymore. You can't
Exactly.
discount anything along the process. I have a grandmother here, and she don't believe in wasting nothing. A lot. I'm like, that's been there for a long time. Oh, now, girl, I'm gonna eat it. But the truth of the matter is, in our lives, if we parallel that in our lives, nothing's wasted. Would
Nothing.
you say? What do
It's,
you, what
it's
you thought on
all
that?
usable. I went back to a page that I managed, and I've always post there, but giving it attention. The Lord had me this morning go back and really pay attention that I had built this particular page to over close to 800 women. And I went back, I said, let me chat with these ladies. So sometimes we move away from things, not fully understanding the value at the moment. And I think when we go back and revisit some of the things of the old, some things, need to stay,
Right.
but some things, really can reflect and say, what did I miss there? What can I go back and really cultivate, a newness to revive it. So all things are not old and dead. I think everything has a value and has a place, even if it's just the platform of a learning experience. And now you can step on that to build something else. Everything has a lesson in it, for us to learn.
Absolutely. And I like that, because you said something. You said, now some things you just leave them dead. Yes. But you still take the experience, and you take the wisdom that you gained,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't have to revive the situation, but you do have to extract that which is useful.
Yeah.
And it could be a dead relationship, but you could have learned a lot. You could have learned what you don't like. You could have learned what you like. Because everything has value. And I think if we look at all of our experience as value adds, no matter what,
Yeah.
then we can craft that story, right?
I think, we bring value, as entrepreneurs, as people who are visionaries, we bring value. And sometimes when we birth something, like you're in this birthing your greatness, when we birth our greatness and we move on to the next, sometimes we really don't understand the impact, the influence that was made in that season. And so that is one of the things that I'm having to reflect on and to appreciate, that when I see other things birth, or other things growing, I was a part of that. That's a part of my influence. That's a part of,
Yeah.
something that I inspired somebody to do something great. And so that is something, again, that is not wasteful, because now you can hinge on that. Now, if I did that, I can offer so much more. I can offer so much more.
And as soon as you said that, literally as you said that, it brought to my mind the story when Jesus and his mother went to that wedding feast. And at that wedding feast, they had run out of wine, and
Yeah.
his mother was like, "You know what? Y'all go talk to him and do whatever he says." And the first thing he said was, "You know, it's not my time." Um, but it might not have been his time, but he had the skill set, right?
Yes.
He had the ability to contribute in that time, and it was there with his mama. He didn't want to, I don't even think he really wanted to be there per se, you know, but he went. And then the value that he added there, he added it, but he understood that that was not a part of his overall purpose. That wasn't a part of his overall plan, but it was still a place that he could help. And I think that really translates
The
for
miracle
a lot of us.
the miracle was needed. It was a necessity.
Yeah.
It was a
And
necessity.
sometimes we're, you know, I recognize, I mean, when you said that, it really clicked for me. And I hope that it clicks for the audience. You know, sometimes we want things because we're not really aware of who we are. He was very clear
Yeah.
about his mission and vision and his timing and everything. And when you're not clear about that, then you're in spaces that sometimes you want to take on as your own.
And this was an illustration I used in my book. And I think what you're saying is Jesus knew his power and his skill set, and he lended, whatever was needed at that particular time. And so I talk about how these little things were created. Somebody had an idea, and how this idea came about. I was trying to show different colors, but real quickly, how this idea came about was there was a man, and his name was Art, and he sung in the choir. He had a hymn book, and he wanted to save his spaces in his book. So he would tear off pieces of paper, and he said, I wish I could create, or I wish I had, something that would help me to, lock my pages down. And so he connected with his friend, who had the resources and the ability to do that. So I say to your listening audience today is that it's important to know what we have in our hands.
Yeah.
Know the influence and the ability of the people that are around us. So I see your guests have come on.
Yes.
You guys have it. Thank you so much again.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Michelle.
Yes.
Don't try to run off. Thank you so much. Give us the link to register before you go, please.
Sure. So the free 7-day challenge to writing your book, go to bit.ly/I got a story. Hello. So what you're telling me is, hello, I got a story. So I want you to go to bit.ly/I got a story. Hello. If you know you're ready to join the challenge, you can just go to the bit.ly link, and then is I got a story. So either one to get you connected to us, and you'll be able to join the challenge. It's going to be fun. It's going to be amazing. And you'll hear and learn all the rewards and things we have for those people that join us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
You're
joining
so
us,
welcome.
Michelle, on such a short notice. You are an amazing, amazing business partner. Thank you so much. All right. Well, next up, I'm gonna let you go. Next up is our esteemed guest. Hello, Arquella Hargrove. How are you?
Yeah.
Yes, it's the life of an entrepreneur. We really appreciate you. Fitting us in today, and I know things happen, and we are absolutely cool with that. But we really wanted to have the conversation with you about this new buzzword, okay? Because we know that you're a national expert in the diversity and inclusion field in HR, and we wanted to bring you on to talk about this new buzzword that we're hearing a lot: unconscious bias. It's kind of the elephant in the room right now, from the White House to your house. It it is happening. Right? And so, kind of first of all, tell us a little bit about this unconscious bias elephant. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Great. Well, thank you for having me on excited to be here. But you think about unconscious bias, and these, as we know, are some trying and problematic times, even painful. But it has been, happening for a while in our country and for all of us. And from the pandemic to the death of George Floyd and just all the things that are continuing to happen has been very heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
as a result, it's stirring up many emotions, and rightfully so. And so that we know that we're all made better by the diversity and inclusiveness that exists within our communities and our organizations and just all around, right? And
Right.
so we're having these tough conversations. I don't say tough, but we're having these needed conversations around understanding unconscious bias and really creating awareness. It's not to make people feel bad. It's not to put a hammer over people's head. It's just, how do we create awareness to talk about why these things may be happening and what may be causing it? And so that's why we're doing a lot of the work around and sharing unconscious bias. Again, it's a training around awareness. And so every day we are faced with countless bits of information while making decisions that range from the pragmatic to the strategic. And
Yes.
as we confront more and more information, we have to act quickly while considering those varying perspectives. And so the result is that we're primed to rely on our biased thinking. Why is that? Because unconscious biases are how our brains compensate for the overload. And so those are things that we will talk about in training, what's going on within our brain, because bias can inhibit performance and lead to poor decision making. And we don't want that. We don't want to say or do things that will cause a adverse impact for someone else. And so we get into unconscious bias, really about making those assumptions or judgments based on a person, group, or thing. We can have a bias against anything. And
Right.
so just creating that awareness and educating people around what's happening. And then the key is strategies. What are some strategies that we can do to mitigate those biases, right? How do we get to those stories that we're telling ourselves about people that we don't know? How do we counteract that, right? How do we
Right.
stop those making those assumptions and get to know that other person, because they may be a great person, they may be a great candidate for your organization, but we won't know that by making an assumption or judgment until we get a chance to know that person and have a conversation.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that you talked about the things that are going on in our head, because that's really what it is. We're on autopilot about a lot of things. So we're on autopilot about our likes and our dislikes, and it causes us to show up, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the boardroom, or whether it's on social media. And Lord, it's showing up on social media. These unconscious bias, like things that we don't even consciously think about. They're just rooted in us. Mama said
Mhm.
XYZ, and now we're 50 and we're still reacting to certain things based on what mama said, right? So from a professional and HR professional, for those individuals who may not be leading a team, but they're on a team, what are some of the ways you're instructing them to kind of help them navigate that and be conscious about their unconscious bias?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things we think about, get geeky, but in our brain, study shows that our brain is trying to process 11 million pieces of data, right?
Wow.
However, our brain can only process 40 pieces of that data according to science. And so you think about our brain is making these mental shortcuts. And so we're relying on what we've been taught, right? As you said, what your parents taught you, right? Or what we see in the media or on social media, all of those things, those shortcuts, we're making decisions based on that, right? And good, bad, or indifferent. It's like, okay, why is this happening? And so, really, again, we have to be able to check our assumptions, right? Why am I thinking that way? Why is this coming up for me? And then it's getting that awareness. So whether it's through a training, whether it's there's hundreds of resources out there. And then once they do have that awareness, putting some of those strategies into practice. And then from there, it is every day we're going to have things that are coming up, right? Even, I say for myself, every day there's something that's coming up. But
Yeah.
again, I'm able to stop and question myself. I'm able to connect with someone who may be different and build that relationship, so I don't have those thoughts, so I don't say the wrong thing, right? And when I see things in the media, because I do have relationships, because I do this work, I know a lot of those things not to be true. And
Right.
so it's really being able to have that confidence, and really being able to have some of that knowledge in order to say, you know what, I'm not going to listen to Fox tonight. That's not true. That's not, they're just spinning the story. And so
Right.
we have to be able to turn off the TV. We have to be able to turn off social media sometimes, because that feeds into our biases. And so those are things. And then also it's called the implicit association test.
Mm.
So people can go out and they can take all types of tests. It's free to get insight into where they may have biases, whether it's based on gender, religion, education, even weight, right? I've had people that have biases towards people who had weight issues. And as we drill down, it's like, okay, why do you think you have a bias towards that person? And it was because they thought the person wasn't disciplined enough, because they were overweight. So again, it's really for people to become aware and then start to make those shifts, how they think about people, and then how they're going to interact with them.
Absolutely. And as you were talking, one of the things, and I didn't even know, like I said, this is a new word for me, but I didn't even know that I was doing this. But I have a habit when I'm writing an email in response to something,
Mm-hmm.
if I write it the way I feel it the first time, I don't send it. Like, I read it and I'm like, oh, that was cute. Like what you just said was not nice. But
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes we don't take that extra moment to take a step back and review how we're viewing or how we're responding. So I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
In your space, so we talked about the employee. Now let's deal with the management level, because they have more of a responsibility in this thing as well. What are some of the things that in your trainings and things on a management level, or a CEO, because this could be someone running their own company, what are some of the things that you're telling them to help them, navigate this particular unconscious bias terminology?
Yeah, something too that, as we're unpacking unconscious bias, to really stress that it impacts performance, it impacts our communication, our relationships, and in order for us to understand what's happening, and for a leader, we want leaders, if they to be inclusive. And one of the traits of being an inclusive leader is to have that awareness, and then to take the steps to mitigate their biases, because as leaders, it impacts decision making, from, as I said, performance to recruitment to who they're doing business with or not doing business with. And so really to think about, when we are in a more inclusive environment, performance increases. There's more collaboration, there's innovation, there's the opportunity for diversity of thought, as well as people are thriving. And that's the goal, is for any organization to be diverse, right? Just the representation, but also to be equitable and inclusive. And so for leaders to understand the value that this brings, when they are aware and they're providing this to their people and they're practicing it themselves, they'll definitely see the results from the work that they do.
Yeah.
And it's not just a check the box. It's not, oh, we're doing diversity training, or oh,
Right.
we're doing bias training, we're done, right? No, it's this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's
Right.
something that it's continuing, it's a journey. And I like to say, when I'm doing this work, it's like we're starting the conversation, right? And so it's not a check the box. I don't want to do a check the box for anyone, because it's not going to work, it's not going to be sustainable, but it has to be a part of the overall strategic process for the
Right.
organization.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of us, we do, we kind of just check the box, and we don't really look at the that this is a continual process. And even as a community, as a culture, as a nation, we're all watching unconscious bias unfold every day, every
Absolutely.
day. Yes. And so, um, let's switch on over to that social media platform thing. And I know that, I know that you're really strategic, and you kind of, I'm pretty sure, just because of your busyness, you're not always tuned into social media, or you make it your business not to. But what are some things that, you know, uh, because people are losing jobs behind what they're saying on social media. They are losing friendships behind what they're saying on social media. So, what is, from your from a with your consultant hat on, what can you say to just the average person about how they need to handle their unconscious biases socially in this climate?
Well, one is we have to be aware of what those biases are, and what may be a trigger, what comes up for them. And our biases come from our experiences. If we have certain experiences, then that can cause that filter. If we've been taught right in our homes, we are taught a certain way. We're taught to think this way about a group of people. Also, it comes from the media. So all of that's feeding into our biases. So one, we have to be aware of what those biases are, and what's coming up for you. And then two, it is being able to check yourself, right? And one of the first tips that we talk about is to question our assumptions, right? And why we're thinking this, why are we doing that? And then two, it's having someone, even to have an accountability partner, right? Someone who is able to hold you accountable when these things come up for you, when you say something or do something, right? Who's there to hold you accountable, to help to reinforce that learning and that awareness. And then two, sometimes we have to just shut it down, right? Not to go there and to be the bigger person in a lot of these cases, because unfortunately people are going to probably bait people in and like, okay, just this is out there, I got to speak to it. You don't have to speak to anything, right?
Right.
So it's really just being, having the discipline to refrain from some of these conversations, because again, for me, is what's the purpose, and what's the end result, right? If it's not something that's positive, if it's not something that's going to help move the needle forward, then I don't need to be a part of the conversation. And so we have to be able to have some discipline there. And two, we may have to have courageous conversations with people, because some people will say and do things that we're not aware of, and so sometimes we have to bring that to people's remembrance, and to have those conversations, that will cause us to be courageous, and to be able to create awareness for someone else, be able to educate someone else. And so that's what I would recommend for individuals as out here in the social media space.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I took all of that advice without even hearing it from you. I remember early on, when the things were happening, I saw a post that I did not like. I responded, and it took me into a 15, 20, 30 minute, I don't even know how long, we went back and forth, back and forth. And once I came to, because you just slip, like you just
Mhm.
kind of leave yourself. And I looked, although I didn't say anything negative, just the fact that I chose to go back and forth with someone in a conversation, like you said, that did not produce anything but emotion. I
Mhm.
recognized that I was too connected. I
Mhm.
was too, and so I took a step back from social media for
Mhm.
about 30 days after that,
Mhm.
to detox. And so I absolutely agree and concur that if you
Mhm.
find yourself in that space, and you find yourself, just totally on,
Mhm.
just responding to everything,
Mhm.
if it's not moving your needle forward,
Mhm.
it is definitely time to step back.
Absolutely. And then two, you also want to be mindful that organizations have social media policies. And so if you are employed with an organization and you are engaging in conversation that is not aligned with the organization's goals, or if you have signed off that you would adhere to those policies, and if this comes to their attention, that may be grounds for termination. And so we want to be mindful of any policies and procedures that we have signed off on to with our organizations, because again, there that may be grounds for termination if you are engaging in conduct on social media that is totally against, what the company stands for.
Absolutely. And we've been seeing that play out in the news
Yes,
a lot,
yes,
a
yes,
lot lately. Yeah. So,
exactly. Yeah.
perfect advice. And I know that I'm not going to pull our segment any longer than what it is, because I know you've got to get back to your day in the life of Arquella Hargrove. But in closing, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that individuals know about this? And I call it an elephant in the room, the unconscious bias. And let me just wait a minute. Let me ask one more question before I get into the close. We know that unconscious bias can be, racial. About race. It could be about sex. It could be,
Mhm.
but it could be about various things, right? What are
Mhm.
some of the common things or common themes that you're seeing coming up in the workplace as an issue?
Yes, we can have a bias against a person, group, thing. It doesn't matter. So some of the biases that come up and I hear probably daily, and I just just got off of a call where we're talking about planning for an unconscious bias training, where people have bias against people with tattoos, right? And I always ask why, and it could be they've had an experience, and probably a negative experience, or they think that this person is violent and what they see on TV. And a lot of times I say when people have tattoos, it's a form of art for people.
Yeah,
So we don't know that because we're making an assumption or judgment, right?
right,
And so being aware of that. Or I've had people who have bias against someone who doesn't live in the same area as they do, or someone just today I heard, oh, they had a bias because they were in a certain neighborhood. They only saw pickup trucks and make America great again signs. So there's like, oh
right,
yeah, this in this neighborhood is this certain kind of person, right? So they
right,
were forming a bias, right? They didn't know
right,
any of the people in the neighborhood, but based on the cars, based on what was in the yard, they made an assumption, right?
right.
And so, yeah, and I've had people say, oh, I have bias against people who live in the suburbs. I mean, so people have biases against everything.
Everything.
So not only based on someone's race or ethnicity or gender, or if they're a LGBTQ plus community, it could be anything. And so it's being aware of that. And for me is processing why is that a bias? Why do you think that's coming up for you? And then what are some ways that we can de-bias or manage that bias? Because again, it's going to impacts how we engage with people. So we want to be true to our identities and who we are. We want to be our authentic selves. And I always like to say we want to lean into our identities and how we show up, but
Mhm.
also just being aware that what may come up for other people. And so again, I can't stress awareness enough.
Absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
so thank you. I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I don't want them to think it's only one level of bias. It could be anything.
Anything, absolutely
Anything. Yes,
anything. And it
absolutely.
yeah, it's not and two, a lot of times it's like, oh, it's a black and white thing. It's a humanity thing.
Yeah,
So when
yeah,
we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a humanity thing. It's about humanity. And so really want
absolutely.
to stress that.
Absolutely. So in closing, do you have anything upcoming, anything you want to share? Anything in closing that you want to let the audience know, or even how to get in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you for that. One thing I want to just leave with a quote that I say daily, and it's by the late great James Baldwin. And he says that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And so that's why we start the conversations, because nothing's going to change until we take the steps to make that happen. And again, it's starting with these conversations around unconscious bias. It's starting with the conversations around, how do I be an inclusive leader? How do I create a diverse, equitable, and inclusive space so everyone feels like they belong and they feel respected and there's emotional safety there? So those are things that I strive for every day, to see happen within organizations. So on the Collaborative U, I have a course, unconscious bias course, and so it's
Yes,
don't judge a book by its cover. So would love for everyone to
yes.
enroll in that course. It's very interactive, and it's again creating that awareness, providing some strategies, and so would love for everyone to sign up for that course. As well as I'm here as a resource as I partner with organizations on their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies, and also providing that training and coaching that's needed. And people can reach out to me. It's info at arquellahargrove.com. So that's info at Arquella, ARQUELLA, Hargrove, HARGROVE.com.
I'm typing all of that out, and I wish I could type as fast as you talk, but I'm going to have it up on the screen. Info at arquellahargrove.com. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's found on collaborativeu.com. There it is. I've put it in the notes. I'm about to put it on the screen. And upcoming, we have a Discover Your Greatness Summit, and you are one of our guest speakers. And so that information will be coming out shortly. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week on the CollaborativeU TV with our esteemed guest, Arquella Hargrove, a national advisor on that diversity and inclusion in that framework, and an author and business coach. If you guys need her, the information to reach her is right up on the screen. Don't forget, we are here to inspire, empower, and educate right here on the Collaborative U. We will see you on Monday at 11 a.m. Same time, same place. We are out. Peace. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Thea.
You're welcome.